we are celebrating our 15th Otronicon. 15 years ago, we had a vision for an event that would connect the worlds of education, industry, and entertainment to explore the impact of interactive technology on how we live, learn, work, and play. And over the years, Otronicon has evolved to accomplish that and a whole lot more. Now, we also really explore the amazing careers in STEM that are available and the innovation that is pulsing through Central Florida. So we have amazing partners who are able to connect with our guests of all ages. We do workshops on all different facets of design and technology, and there's competitions, displays, robots, video games, simulators, virtual reality. It is a great opportunity if you're curious about technology, if you're looking for a career in video games, simulation, virtual reality, or you just want to have a great time exploring this. So we're very excited. It runs Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday this weekend, January 17th through the 20th. It's included with admission to the Orlando Science Center. And if you're a member of the Science Center, you get Otronicon included. Just 4 days of an amazing experience exploring technology, STEM careers, and what is going to be possible for us in the future.
That's awesome. So we'll go ahead and get started. We are here at Advent Health, and who wants to go first?
Hi, my name is Pat Casal. I'm a pediatric urologic surgeon. That's a mouthful for someone that takes care of little kids from the age of when they're first born, even before birth, all the way to the age of 18. And I operate on kidneys, bladders, and other systems of the urinary tract in little kids using robotics. Just so you get a little bit about me, I was an electrical engineer and biology major in college, so I am a total math and science geek. I love this stuff. I think it's an amazing way to help people. It's made me a better surgeon, and it's made me a better scientist because I get to think about these things every day.
Good morning. My name is Janelle Nix, and this is Kathy Summit, and we represent Advent Health Orlando for surgical services. One of our programs that we have at the hospital is robotics. So behind us here, you can see a couple different Da Vinci robots that we have. To be able to work alongside of surgeons, there's a couple different ways that you could get into the operating room. One way is by going to school to be a registered nurse, and the other way is going to school to be a scrub technician. The scrubs work alongside of the surgeons during the case. The RNs are in the room overseeing everything. I'm going to hand you off to Kathy here, who can get you a little bit more detail on our robots.
Hello. This is actually our 14th time coming to Otronicon, and as we have been coming, the robot system that we bring is Intuitive Surgical. It's Da Vinci, and as robots have been evolving, the robots that we brought today, there's two different versions. The first one is the SI. It's this one right here. It is considered a single quadrant. It does single procedures, mostly like gallbladders or hysterectomies or simple things where you position a patient, you do the procedure, and that's the end of it. This is the version that is very excellent for a main operating room that we work in. It allows two different types of service lines, like a gynecology doctor or a urologist work together, or one of the other specialties like general surgery. This feature of this robot allows the boom to swing. So we position a patient for both procedures. One surgeon does their procedure, then the next surgeon comes in, and we can swing the boom around to accommodate that surgeon to do their procedure. As you can see, this is the XI. This is the SI, and we have two of our robotic staff over here. This is Jennifer, and this is Brittany over here. They are actually working the robot. Although this is considered a simulation, this is not a simulation. These are actual robots, and they are working them just like the surgeons would be working them in the operating room.
I already have a first question that came in, and they want to know, how heavy is the robot?
It's 1,800 pounds. approximately, depending on the version and the additions that you add to it. The robot has typically 3 to 4 parts to it. There's this patient arms section, which is this big platform back here. There's a vision tower that all the components hook into and run our energy to cauterize and cut and run the systems over here. It's got a picture that you can watch. Generally, the staff are watching this picture. And the third component is over here. It's actually the surgeon console. This is where the surgeon sits and he runs the arms. Generally, the surgeon will scrub into the case, put his little tiny incisions and ports in place, get everything the way he wants it at the field, leave it with a couple people at the field to assist him, and he'll kick off his shoes and sit down at the console and start the procedure. And he'll ask for certain things at the field, like certain instruments. You'll notice these are instruments that they're doing, cameras. Another aspect of this newer robot is this camera can go in any of the 4 arms. Whereas this SI system, like I said before, it's a single quadrant. It only goes in one section, so it's a limitation. But Da Vinci is evolving. They work with the physicians. They get impact. Question that we often get is, can we do this procedure overseas or someplace else with our surgeons doing it here? And the answer is yes, we could do that, but we don't do that. And there's a couple reasons why we don't. It's not necessarily that the connectivity is an issue, although that could be a problem. One of the issues is if you're in a third world country doing a procedure and you run into something that you don't have equipment to take care of, or if you have to open because of a disease process they didn't suspect, or anything that could happen, they don't necessarily have the support and equipment that they need there. So yes, the technology's there, but we're not there yet. Although our surgeons are, they're helping third world countries and a lot of different countries because they go international and they teach them. And as we upgrade our robots, we send them different models of our robots so that they are learning and coming up with their practices in other countries too. So,
Thank you. So we had a question, has the robot ever made a lethal error? And that's an excellent question. You have to understand these robots are not automatic. They don't work on their own. So they only go by the input that we give them. So the robot themselves, no, they're actually extremely safe and they do not do anything automatically and they don't make lethal errors. The true definition for robots are a machine that works automatically. So the versions of our robots started from just being what we call surgical actuators, which are machines that go by input of human input. We termed them robotics early on, but we really don't get to true robotics till we hit the XI. The XI has a little bit of an automated motion where you put the target organ that you want to do surgery into the viewfinder, and then the robot automatically aligns its arms. So this is the first version that we truly have some automation. The robot doesn't move unless we tell it to move. And there's a lot of interest on how to make the robot a little bit more automatic and a little bit more streamlined in efficiency of what a surgeon could do. So when you look at careers that could happen with robotics medicine, it's not the medical field. If you're interested in engineering, if you're interested in virtual reality, if you're just interested in mathematics, figuring out the algorithms that you could put together to make these things happen, it's not just a medicine thing, it's a true science thing. So if, for example, medicine wasn't your thing and you didn't want to be a nurse or a PA or a technician or a surgeon to operate it, that doesn't mean you can't work with them. And that's the exciting thing about robotics. It takes a ton of different scientific people to come together to make this happen.
Hi, so we got a question, how much does the robot cost? So we actually got 4 new robots last summer, 5 new robots last summer. It's a very exciting day for us at our Orlando. So this robot here is about $2.5 million. So that includes the robot and some other things, but the robot, this one here is about $2.5 million. And then someone asked, by doing robotic cases, is that more expensive? So The cost of the case could potentially be more, but the robots provide some excellent benefits for patients. So this surgery would be considered less invasive. So patients usually have a faster recovery time. So you're like, if your parents were to have robotic surgery, they may not need to be out of work for as long. They'll be able to be back to their full strength sooner. Also, too, it could decrease length of stay in the hospital. We do a lot of robotic cases as what we call elective cases. So those patients come in for surgery, and a lot of them either go home the same day or they'll stay overnight in the hospital. For some of our more uh, for some of our cases that are a little bit more involved, those patients would usually be in the hospital for 2-3 days, whereas before, if they had big open incisions, they would be in the hospital for 4 or 5 days, sometimes up to a week. So the case itself might be a little bit more expensive, but the actual cost of care surrounding that whole episode of care would be a little less.
Our next question is, what if there are technical difficulties and the robot just malfunctions? What will happen during the surgery?
So I'm going to hand you back to Kathy for that, or Dr. Casal. Both of them could actually answer that question from two different perspectives.
So the question was, what happens if there's a malfunction? And we hate to say it, it does happen. It's a computer system. The good news is that we're in total control. So when the robot malfunctions, we would literally just take the robot apart and continue the procedure in a laparoscopic manner. It means we use the same ports and we use instruments that we use directly with our hands and not the robot. But the robot malfunctions are extremely rare, and most of the time it just requires a reset, just like a regular computer. So we would be able to reset the robot while we continue to work and then put the robot back on. It's very rare to have to convert to a different type of surgery where we're no longer using minimally invasive ports and we have to make big incisions, but that's extremely rare unless something occurs that's a human error and not a robotic error.
So one of the common things that we have, you can't see it from where you are, but we have a myriad of cords all over the floor. And as we walk around the ORs or as we move equipment, we tend to knock those out or they fall loose. And I'm going to simulate a fault to show you a technical difficulty so you can see how we handle it. I'm shutting you off, Jen. So as you can see, the arms have all given me red signals, and also on my screen it's given me a fault number and it's showing me what's wrong. It says this is a non-recoverable fault. We have recoverable and non-recoverable faults. If it's a recoverable fault, we just press the button and it turns the machine back on. This one is a non-recoverable. I'm going to shut the system down.
Da Vinci is shutting down.
And I'll just make sure that I've plugged the cord back in, which I have, and then I'll reboot the system as soon as it drops down. I'll reboot it and we'll go on from there. This XI system has a battery backup of 16 hours. So if we lost power or if we override a circuit or something else happens, this robot will continue working. See if I can get it to come up for you now. Takes a little bit. And while we're waiting for it to come up, I just wanted to mention, I'm not sure if it was covered. At the hospital, we try to do as minimally invasive surgery as we can for all the reasons that have already been talked about. But why would you do laparoscopy, which is some ports with instruments? Why would you do a robot instead of doing laparoscopy? We get that a lot of questions about that. And one of the reasons is, if you notice, the scope right here on these robots is not held by an assistant. It's controlled by the doctor sitting at the console. So he doesn't say, move my scope in or move my scope back or turn it to the right, or he controls it. He just touches pedals on the floor of that console and fixes it the way he wants it. Also, the wristed instruments that come with the robot system, they allow the surgeon to go beyond the motion of his actual wrist itself. It also has the capability to steady this. Just being human beings, we don't have the smooth motion that this robot puts into the system for the surgeon. Another thing is the scopes that they're looking through. As they're looking through those consoles, there's two eyes. Each eye is separate. It gives a 3D picture, each one. A laparoscope is just a 2D picture. And if you lose your picture on your scope, you're done. But if you lose one eye on the robot, you're not done over here on your console. You can still see. And although on this vision tower, we only see one of their eyes, if we lose our picture, we can flip into the manual and turn it so we can see the eye that they can see out of. That's a technical difficulty. It doesn't happen often, but if it does, it doesn't shut us down. We can fix it. So, questions?
So we had a question, how do patients choose between the different types of surgery, whether it's robotic or open? And that's a great question. It's very complicated. First off, it goes by surgeon preference. Not a lot of surgeons do robotic surgery. I give you my evolution in pediatric urology. When I first started doing robotics back in 2005, I was one of the first of few surgeons who was doing it. And it was very difficult at that time because the technology was new. It was new in children. And how do you present that to families? You give them all the risks and benefits of doing surgery, whether it's open, laparoscopic, or robotic. And some families choose to go for conventional open surgery still today, and some go for the robot. It really depends on the patient's preference. The best that we could do is just inform them of what might be best for their baby or for themselves if they're getting surgery done for themselves, and give them all the benefits of each procedure that we could do in a different manner and what works for them in their lifestyle. So that's a very good question, and it gets a little complicated. But the best that we could do is we give them the science and we give them the emotion and the experience behind it, and together as a team we make a decision.
How common are the robot surgeries?
So robotics has actually been growing exponentially over the years. If you look at just in pediatrics, it was maybe across the country, and back in 2004, 2005, maybe a couple of hundred a year to thousands a year now. So it's grown quite a bit. And it's more because if you look at this console here, there are two consoles, and one of them is a surgeon console, the other one's a teaching console. So what happens as we got this technology that came into play, we were able to teach our young training doctors how to do this surgery in a safe manner. You could kind of think of this as the driver's ed of robotic surgery. So what we do is the surgeon who, like me, who's the attending, will sit at one of the consoles, and we'll have our trainee sit at the other. And we allow the trainee to go through motions that we could use things on the surgeon console to point to. We have little pointers on there that say pick up something here, drop something there. This is where I want you to do the dissection. And if at any point we find that the dissection isn't going the way we want it to go, we instantaneously could take it over without any warning or any hiccup. So it's made teaching this extremely safe and extremely efficient. So more and more surgeons now, as they're training, are coming out very proficient in robotic surgery.
What other qualifications does the doctor need to operate with the robot?
So every hospital has its own set of rules to do robotic surgery. So that's a great question. We have a standard. You have to be trained during your fellowship training or residency training, which means what that is you go to medical school for 4 years, and then depending on the surgical field you want to do, there's anywhere from 4 to 6 years of surgical training. And then on top of that, like I did, an extra 2 to 3 years of fellowship training. And during those 4 to 8 years of extra training, you have to get a certain number of cases in order to be allowed to do this type of surgery. Every subspecialty has its own rules of what is needed for proficiency, but a hospital mandates typically that you do at least 10 to 20 cases a year to maintain your proficiency.
Do the robots perform brain surgery?
So there are different robots that help perform brain surgery. They're not these robots. They're different ones that help with positioning using different types of radiographic imaging like MRIs and CAT scans to do what we call stereotopic access. So there are robots that can help with that. We have different robots that help with spine surgery. We even have different robots that do types of endoscopy. And what an endoscopy is when we have to put a camera that's on a tube, basically, for example, down your throat and into your stomach. There are certain robots that help you with that type of procedure. So there are many different we kind of take this as the holy grail of surgical robots. It was one of the first ones that came out. There were two companies at the time when these robots first came out, but the evolution that's come of them has been amazing. They're all working on trying to get robots that can be functional throughout their existence, but that's to come later on.
How many robots do you have? Do you know how many they have at
Yeah, we have 5 XI robots, this type at the Orlando campus, and 1 SI. And then the other Advent Health hospitals have their own robots as well. And we also have a simulation center called the Nicholson Center that has robots there for teaching and for conferences. So we take our research and our teaching very seriously when it comes to robotic surgery, and we want to make sure that when we teach this, we have all our avenues open and available to teach the next generation of surgeons.
She's going to answer the next one.
Yes, there was a question about whether we are taking the place or actually doing the job of medical technologists. Okay, let me talk just a little bit about, if you can look at this vision tower here, when we're actually in the OR, I don't know if you can see, there's a machine in here. It says Stryker on it. This is a vendor that we partner with. They work with Da Vinci. This machine right here, it's not turned on because we're not using it here. It's an Irby. It's an electric. It provides energy for the doctor's consoles. It stops bleeding, different things. And this tower is actually the Da Vinci tower that we put all the other instruments on. So as far as medical technology, we have a service contract with Da Vinci. They come in, they do equipment checks on it. They constantly see behind, they can see when the doctor puts their head in that console. It tells them the head's in the console, the doctor's making this move with a certain instrument, and it's been activated for so many seconds. They know everything. They can see behind the robot. We can call a number that we have posted on the side, and they have a service, customer service there. We'll say, hey, we're getting a message code. We don't know what it means. Can you help us out? And he'll say, well, it looks like you have a bad core, or blah, blah, blah. So one of the things that we've noticed as nurses and scrub techs is as we grow in technology in our surgical field, in the medical field, we have to know more about electricity and energy. And these pieces of equipment, they pull a lot of amperage. So we have to make sure we plug them in correctly in the wall. We have to know how to plug certain things in. If you could see the back of this machine where we have everything, all the cords run, you would see that you have to have quite a bit of knowledge about video connectivity and electrical connectivity and how to route certain things to different equipment. That's an aspect of our job that we never really had to work before. The fact that we have so many vendors in the same machine, they don't take care of the machine. It's falling to the care of the people within the OR. So as sorry, I was looking to see if my colleague that works in one of the other departments was here. It falls to us to make sure that the robots are plugged in right, the cords aren't coming loose in the back, that we have things done on the equipment. So we aren't really replacing medical technicians. We are kind of adding that to the job that we have. There are definitely positions with these service companies and these vendors like that do the PMs on the different things and run them.
How long does it take to set up and calibrate the machine before each surgery?
So this XI machine calibrates itself. We plug it in and it calibrates itself. The SI, has to be calibrated from the field. There are buttons on the camera that the scrub tech or the nurse, they look up there and they push the buttons on the side of the camera and it tells them to white balance it, and they hold a button and it tells them the white balance is good. And then they click down another arrow and it says calibration, and they hold it down pointing at a certain piece of light or a certain X on a paper, and it focuses it for them and it'll tell them calibration's good. At the same time with the SI, this one over here, someone is looking in the surgeon's console because, like I said before, it's got 2 different cameras and 2 different eyes. And if you're looking at this, you only see one eye. So we have to make sure both of the eyes of the surgeon are working. So some circulator, RN, somebody is in the room looking in that when the calibrations and the light balances are being done.
Are the robots fairly portable, or do they stay in one operating room?
So when we only had we had 3 XI and we had 3 SI and 1 XI, and we had a lot of surgeons that wanted to use the XI. So we did move that XI around where we had real estate available for those procedures to be done. That is not optimum to do that, because every time you move these pieces of equipment, they get bumped, the arms get knocked. I think it's like $4,000 to replace an arm. That's why you have a good service contract, because it pays for itself. But anyway, this one is very heavy. We had a really hard time moving it on the carpet in the Science Center. This one has an automatic drive on it, so it was a little bit easier. But as you bump over stuff, it faults out. It's not good for the equipment to be moved around. The arms on this physician console, they float and move and could be damaged as you're doing that. When we move the equipment around, we have to take the fiber optic cables loose, and every time you pull that out of the back of the machine, you can mess up the outlets.
The next question is, how would a student get involved in creating the robot specifically for the healthcare field?
How do students?
Like if a student that's listening today, how can they grow up and create
Well,
these?
Well, I think I said earlier, as staff in the robotic team, and we work with the doctors and we work with the vendors, and we say, boy, it would really be nice if we didn't have to calibrate this, or we didn't have to do something, or if we had shorter cords or longer cords. Or so as you do the profession that you're in and you integrate with the team that you're in, things come up and you give feedback to the vendors, and Da Vinci goes back and they work on their robot and they make it better. You might want to speak to this. I'm sure surgeons have had a lot of input on how they do.
So it's a great question. And I think I'm going to go back to what I said before. You don't have to be in the medical field to be excited about this. So the way students get excited about this, and there's programs that I've been in the past, you could start up robotics clubs yourself in your school. What you might even consider a rudimentary robot, they're extremely difficult to build to make them work the right way. And getting that fundamental type of knowledge early on, and that excitement on building your own robot, like our senior thesis projects in college for building robots, for like mechanical engineering, is building a robot that actually works. And when you see your robot actually work at the end of the day is an amazing feat. So the best way for you to get excited, the way for you to part of robotics now early on is it gets pretty basic. Love your math, love your science. If you have a robotics program, like a Lego robotics program, join it. You could have speakers come in and show you different avenues that you could pick to do different things in robotics. Like I said, you could be an engineer who builds them. You could be a surgeon that uses them. You could be a technician that takes care of them. There are so many different ways. You could even be in sales. If you're an accountant and you love math, you could be in the sales portion that goes around selling them. So there are a lot of different ways to get involved in robotics in your career, and it's not just medicine. But I'll say it again, at your level, the best thing that you could do is start getting excited about robotics with like a Lego robotics program or something like that in your school.
Do you know what degree students will need to create the robot?
So it'd be different science degrees. And again, it'll depend what you want to do with it. If you want to sell them, you would need a business degree. If you want to build them, you would need some type of science degree, typically an engineering degree. as you go through college. If you want to be a surgeon who operates with them, you could almost have any degree, but you need to be able to go to medical school afterwards. Most people do a pre-med, but I have many friends that are engineers that became physicians, that were history majors and became physicians. You have to then just go through medical school to use it in a surgical platform. But you could also go to nursing school. You could go to PA school. There are a lot of different things that you could do to work with the robot. It depends what your ambition is on how to use it. Do you want to be the driver? Do you want to be the creator? Do you want to be the caretaker? And they're all extremely important roles, because without everybody working together, this would never happen. Until they work on their own, we have to work as a team with them. And it's many people, many different disciplines to make it happen.
She's going to take over the next question.
So we got an question. It's like, do we name our robots? And actually, yes, name our robot. We haven't named the new fleet yet, but Optimus Prime is always a popular name, and that was named of one of the other robots. And as far as someone was asking if we play with the robots, and yes, anytime we get a chance to do that, we do that. You can see these are two of the nursing staff over here, and they are actually playing while we are recording. They're putting the pieces in and out of the puzzles here, and that just shows the dexterity and stuff. And also, I didn't talk about the other procedures that we do. Depending on the surgeon and what actually they're doing, kind of dictates how long the procedure lasts. Our surgeons, we have surgeons that have done over 3,000 cases. Their times are probably faster than some that are just learning. But to say the surgeon is just learning, I don't mean that they're learning on people. They've had plenty of proctoring, they have plenty of training, and when they actually work on people, they know what they're doing, but they still don't have the expertise and talent yet the doctors have put in time and doing 3,000 cases. A hysterectomy for one of our gynecology doctor does cancer, takes him about 2 hours. And have doctors that do kidney removals. That's a very complicated procedure. It probably takes about 2 hours for them to do that too. One of the best surgeries that I ever involved in was a doctor that came in and he did the hysterectomy, removed the female components that had to be removed, and the kidney surgeon had to take out a part of the kidney. So he came in after that and dissected out the part that he had to have out away from the kidney, and they pulled it from the patient with the hysterectomy parts, and the patient went home with just a few tiny little incision sites, whereas if you did that another way, the patient would go home with a big incision. In the main OR where we work, we do a lot of bigger, more complex cases, and with this new XI robot, it's a robot that, like I said, can change and allow many robots. A lot of our complex, and they have 2 or 3 surgeons working on the same person.
Hello?
I think I already saw, what was one of the questions about how are they paid for, the robots paid for? So sometimes, but not often lately, they are gifted by philanthropists, but more so these days, there's capital money set aside from the hospital that pays for them. And the companies that we purchase them from, like Intuitive Surgical, they are they're good about putting payment plans for us.
Well, one day it'd be possible to use the robot like gloves to complete the surgery. Or I guess maybe as far as that, use the gloves.
Like virtual and use gloves?
Maybe.
I don't know. It's up to you guys.
The great thing about robotics is it's complete evolution. So the question about putting on virtual gloves and virtual viewfinders and doing surgery is actually something that is being worked on. Actually being worked on even as we speak now. That's why it's important to have the different fields of science working together. We're teaching the robot how to touch. Part of my research when I was a fellow was teaching the robot how to feel, because when you do this type of surgery, you don't get any tactile feedback. And so we were using things like gold and cadmium lasers with electrical impulses that we were able to feel things like the head of a penny and things like that. So there were amazing advances that are happening in robotics. Are there any other questions?
Another question for a surgeon for you is, which is harder, robot surgery or doing it yourself?
So with robotic surgery, we are doing it ourselves as well. It's just a different way of doing it. The way that we look at it, the way that we're trained, so there are three different types of surgery. There's open surgery, where we make an incision that we could actually get our hands into the area and do surgery. Then there's laparoscopic, which is like robotics, but it has less what we call degrees of freedom. So it's kind of like doing surgery with chopsticks. Then there's the surgery that takes the laparoscopic surgery and the open surgery and kind of combines them together. So you get the minimal access of laparoscopic surgery, but you get your dexterity of open surgery. So for the surgeons, candidly, surgery and robotic surgery are much easier than laparoscopic. And so for example, when I started my career, I did a lot of open surgery, and then I was in the whole realm of laparoscopic surgery, where we were trained to do laparoscopic surgery very proficiently. But then robotic surgery came along, and it made it go even faster and more efficient. And that's the key thing. At the end of the day, it's keeping the patients safe. That's our number one priority, and making sure that they can get back to being the business of being people. You know, we want to get to the business of being kids in a safe, effective, and successful manner. And robotics has allowed us to escalate that and push that to the forefront. Is there any other questions?
Are the surgeries using the robot to be completed quicker than traditional open surgeries?
That depends. You have that really depends. It's a good question. In the beginning, I would say when you're first starting to do robotics, no, it'll probably take you a little bit longer. I find myself to be faster with robotic surgery than I am with open surgery at this point. And I was taught to do both ways quite early on in my career. So it really depends on the surgeon. And we don't really kind of look at speed as being like a benchmark for success. We would love to decrease our anesthesia times, because that actually helps the patients. But what we want to do is ensure we deliver a successful and safe operation. But the question, like which one's faster, it really depends on the surgeon. I know many open surgeons who are extremely proficient at open surgery and can't do robotics. And I know a lot of robotic surgeons who are much more proficient in robotics because they were trained more in robotics than open surgery. So really, it depends on the surgeon. But the key thing to remember at the end of the day is to have the surgeon that's right for you, who could deliver the best care that you could get, and in a safe and very successful way.
What kind of metals are the robots made out of?
That's a really good question. It's a bunch of different ones. Some have magnetic metals in them that are used for certain parts. A lot of it stainless surgical steel and titanium. There are a lot of different metals that go into the robot. It's a very, very complex machine. There isn't just one type.
All right, so you're going to jump in with your.
Someone asked a question referring to do nurses use the robots in surgery? The answer is no for that. Surgeons are the ones who do the surgery. They're the ones who control the robot during the surgical procedures. The nurses and scrub calibrate the robots beforehand and basically do a system check where the surgeries are began before we proceed in the surgical procedure. And that way, a lot of any errors or anything that needs to be taken care of before the surgery begins is rectified. One other thing was, another question was asked, where do we see robots going in the future? The name of the game a lot of this is explore. As you can see, the robots are pretty good size. Over time, the standard that which was two predecessors to the SI would be on the left side of the screen. It was a lot bigger, a lot heavier. So they're making them a lot lighter and a lot pretty much to take a smaller footprint in the surgical suites when we have them in there. So I imagine when the next one comes out after the XI, it'll probably be smaller, more compact, and as well as the robot is actually I know it was mentioned before. The robot is a laparoscopic procedure, but it also is using a robot. It's using a robot basically in a robotic procedure, and that instruments for laparoscopic procedures just have a single tube, so to speak, or a shaft. As you can see on the robot, it mimics hand movements. So you can actually suture, pick up the pieces on there, or do a surgical procedure, and it mimics your hand movements, whether it's suturing or something like that. As well as it was mentioned before, the 3D capability of it, you actually see depth, and rather in a laparoscopic procedure, you only have 2D.
We had a question come up, how did robotic surgery first get started? Like, why did it come up? And it wasn't just to do surgery like we're doing today. It was really developed in the beginning to do telesurgery, something we were talking about before, to do remote surgery. It was for surgeons to be able to give care in the battlefield during war. So if you had a soldier that was injured, there could be a remote robot placed in a bunker or someplace in a battlefield where you could have instantaneous care from a surgeon remotely to try to control certain types of injuries. The biggest obstacle with that was, how do you get the robot to communicate? And for example, doing a satellite jump, when we were looking into doing jumps, when we were looking telesurgery, we first looked at satellite jumps, and when we were planning on doing it, every satellite jump had about a 2-second delay, which was very difficult for a surgeon to do a maneuver with a 2-second delay. Think about, you make a move and then 2 seconds later that move actually happens. So if you have to do more than one satellite jump, it was a little too much. It was just not possible. It wasn't safe. Doing it on fiber optics, doing it on white light is better because it's an 800 millisecond delay in both directions, so almost like the blink of an eye, maybe just a touch longer than the blink of an eye, but it's extremely expensive to tap into that type of technology. So what the robot was first made for, we're actually not utilizing it for that particular endeavor. We're actually using it to make ourselves better surgeons and to give a better outcome for the patients, to allow recuperation from surgery to be expedited.
As a surgeon, why would you choose to not use the robot?
So sometimes it's not safe. If someone has a certain type of medical condition that you have to control things in a different manner, it's actually safer to do open surgery than it is to do robotic surgery. So there are certain medical conditions that would preclude you from doing robotics. So the same way it would preclude you from doing laparoscopy. There are just sometimes you have to go to just old-fashioned surgery.
What kind of features would you like to add to this robot, and what robots do you see happening in the future for surgery?
So what I would love to see happen is that we do get some tactile feedback. I would love more automation in the robot where you could use, and like I said, everyone's working on this. So get excited about your math and your science courses and let's get this going because we need it. But it would be great to use a laser pointer and say, I would to sew from here to here and automatically sew that up, kind of like the way they sew jeans on pants using robotics. And it's very precise and it would be very efficient and very fast. So we would love to see things like that happen. We would love for the robot to start using more imaging technology. So for example, if someone has a type of X-ray or MRI or CAT scan that was done, superimposing the images and then doing digital subtraction of images to get to our target organs to give us a roadmap is something that is currently being evaluated as well. Right, we have things that we use as imaging, and we use ultrasound guidance inside with the robot. It also has something called Firefly. We could use an injectable medicine to delineate vasculature, help us pick out which organ might have, which organ that you're working on has the cancer, and where, for example, it's defined, where the mass is defined, and it allows you to pick that out a little bit easier and give you a roadmap. So bringing in a lot more virtual reality and a lot more imaging helpful as well. It gets a little scary when you start thinking of these things doing things automatically on their own, because the one great thing about being a surgeon instead of being a robot is that you have an emotional connection to your patient, and you want to bring that as part of the care. We don't want to be robot doctors. You know, we want to be nice people to help people through hard situations. So artificial intelligence is going to come into play with robotics in the future, but we have to be careful not to lose that human factor while taking care of people.
How many people have been operated on by the robot, or maybe by you personally?
That's been growing. If you think about, I mean, me personally with robotics, in my career, at some points it's been a couple of hundred a year. I know programs that have done thousands. I know some surgeons who do adult surgery, for example. We don't use it as much in pediatrics as we do in the adult surgery, that have done over 10,000 procedures in their career. So there have been hundreds of thousands of millions of people worldwide who have had robotic surgery.
Do you have to worry about cybersecurity as far as somebody hacking the system during your surgery?
So that's a great question. No, since
or anytime using the technology.
Yeah, so this is all confined to where it is. Usually there's no outside input. However, these robots can be hooked up to an Ethernet connection where they communicate with Intuitive Surgical, so they could monitor the errors that could happen with the robot. So there's always a danger for that to happen, but there's no way to take the robot over through those types of connections. The only thing that they would be seeing was information like this on it that great today, or it reached its point of it reached its maximum yaw pitch, and what could you really do with that is nothing. And patient information is not exchanged over that connection. It's just a robotic movement. So in order to get the patient information, they would have to call the hospital. We would have to go to the team that was in the room, and then we'd have to willingly give that information. So there wouldn't be a breach of security, and no one could take it over. However, if you do procedures that are through a connection, and we're thinking about doing telesurgery, that's one of our biggest hurdles. How do you keep it safe, and how do you keep that connectivity from getting hacked in? And it's one of the things that has actually stopped us from a medical legal standpoint and a safety standpoint on how to do these surgeries remotely. Great question.
How many hospitals use these robots, and are you unique using technology?
So Advent Health is not unique in the area. There are other robots in the area, but Advent is one of the first, and is actually one of the greatest centers for robotic surgery in the country. I've been to a few different institutions in my career, and not every hospital has it. It's a very expensive technology. As you heard, it costs $2.5 million. So you have to have a dedicated team. And just like any other complex surgical procedure, you need that experience to grow over time. So there are hospitals that do have the robot, but there are many hospitals that don't. And we also found that some hospitals that did buy the robot early on, the surgeons didn't know how to use it, and those hospitals ended up giving up that type of technology and didn't embrace it. Where a place like Advent Health, at least in the Florida area, in my opinion, is one of the busiest, if not the robotic centers in Florida with excellent outcomes.
How long does the programming of the machine take, and then how long does it take to have the idea, and then to build the machine, and then from beginning to surgery?
Wow, that's huge undertaking. So to actually program this machine, there are multiple programs that are needed with constant software updates. So think of it as you can't think of it as like a one and done type of thing. It's a constant evolution and a constant maintenance. From the inception of getting an idea and patenting your idea and then building your idea and then having the Federal Drug Administration approve the idea and going through your clinical trials is decades. So the technology that we see today, for example, the XI, a lot of it is technology that was first thought of with the first robot almost 25 to 30 years ago. Start thinking about robotics. So, and it's not just a new idea all on its own. You know, you get ideas from different robotic platforms, like the ones they use in car industry. You'd be very surprised on how the mechanics are similar, but then have to be fine-tuned to what we have to do, for example, for surgery. So that's a great question. It could take a long time just to get FDA approval on something with the research and development that goes into it. Could take 10 years, and sometimes your patents could even run out in that time frame. And getting patents for everything that you do also limits the growth of the technology, because then it becomes a whole big legal thing where people can't use that technology to make something else. So sometimes there are a lot of little obstacles that come into making these things come to fruition. But when they finally do, and we keep adding on to that technology, as you can see, they're amazing machines that have helped a lot of people.
Then she was gonna just do a little now.
So something we haven't talked about is sterile technique. In the operating room with the surgeons at the field, we have to maintain sterility. And someone was questioning why this robot has plastic on it. And these are sterile drapes. They're put on by one of the people that are setting up the case. And it's put on sterilely. The scrub tech would have a gown on and a mask on their face. They would have something that covers their hair, and they'd have sterile gloves on, and they would put the drape over the arm. Now, Jennifer here is going to show you how we drape this one. We just draped this one robot to kind of show you what it looks like draped. She would be fully protected, and she would put this on. She's draping the SI robot.
And then do you use these in the ER or only in the OR?
This is only in the OR. It takes, depending on how many people are help setting up the case, it takes about 20 to 25 minutes to set up the robots and the sterile field, the instruments that the surgeons would be using. The patient usually comes into the room, and we get them all painted with special solutions that help knock back bacteria, so that when we make our little incisions, infection risk is low. So this robot that Jen is draping is a little bit more, it's just draped a little differently. I don't know, it's more difficult to drape. It's just draped a little differently. You can see the platform. You can see this platform here, right here. That's where your instrument's going to click into. This is the little piece that actually goes into the patient. And there's little lines on here that tell the doctor where exactly to have it in the patient so that it works well with the machine. As far as the some of the things that break with the machine, we use these quite a bit. They pull instruments in, and sometimes these little phalanges, what are those called, Jen? Do you remember? Trocar holders. They'll get stretched and they'll start failing. We don't always know that they're failing, and the Da Vinci company, like I said before, they can see what's going on behind the scenes. They'll call us and say, it looks like you've got a trocar holder that's getting ready to need replacement, and they'll come in and replace it for us. So generally they'll see stuff that we even have issue with, and they'll come in and take care of it. But that's one of the things that that we do for breakage for. If you take a look at these are a little bit different than the ones on this newer XI. Jen, will you come show them how to take the instruments off the XI? So at the field, the doctor may say, give me some scissors, and there'll be a grasper in the trocar. So she would go over and she'd take that out, and she would it has certain restraints that only lets her put the instrument so far till the doctor can take care of it. She'll insert the next instrument, she'll pop it down and click it onto the gasket, and the machine recognizes what it is. She'll push it down to a certain level, and then the doctor picks it up from the console and uses it from there. I don't know if I got all the questions. I think I got them all. These instrument tips are different things. This is like a grasper. This is a needle holder, right? This is a needle holder here. We have scissors, and we also have cords that click into these instruments that provide energy, that if there's a little bleeding, the doctor can touch it with the bipolar forceps and it'll stop the bleeding. What else do we have? We have different types of graspers depending on the type of tissue that they're grasping. Sometimes with very delicate stuff, we have microfine bipolar or microfine graspers. What else can I tell you? You want to position the scope, take the scope in and out so they can see? You know, sometimes it'll get dirty, and they'll ask the people up at the field to clean it. So they'll take it out, and we have a special cleaner, and then they'll pop it back in. And I will actually I'll get you. I'll show you what we use to clean the instrument.
So what we could do is give you a quick look of what a surgeon's view is in the Da Vinci. So if you go, we're going to go right up to the viewfinder and we're going to look into it. You could see that that's one eye, and then you could see how both eyes come into play, and then those two images come together, and that's what gives you your 3D vision. If you look through one eye, it's just a 2D vision. That's what you would see just like watching TV or doing conventional laparoscopy. But when you look through both of them, both those images are superimposed on one another by the robot through its internal computer, and that's what gives you your three-dimensional imaging. We thought it'd be pretty neat if you got to see what I get to see on a daily basis when I use it. So this is where we put our fingers in here. We basically put our fingers in here and we rotate the robot arms and we go up and down. So these are our graspers, and that's what allows our instruments to open and close. This is basically our wrist, and this is basically our elbow, and way out here is basically our shoulder. So the great thing about robotics is that it downscales your motion, go from a 1 to 5 scale. So that means it downscales up to 5 times. So a movement like this is actually a movement like this, which allows you to have very fine movement, very delicate tissue, which is what we need when we do pediatric surgery, because our operative field is about the size of a quarter. That's usually the size of the area of interest that we have to do a reconstruction. And utilizing robotics, we get also up to 12 times magnification. Where we do open surgery, we could wear special lenses that could give 3 to 4 times magnification at best. So not only do we get a great digital 3D picture with 12 times magnification, it downscales our movement in order to make it smoother and a little bit more detail-oriented and refined. So robotics in medicine has truly come a long way since I started my career, and the exciting things that all the young engineers and mathematicians, everybody that's working in the different fields of putting electronic components together is making it grow even more and making it safer for our patients. So don't give up on your science and math. If you like it, love it, because what it could do to help people is what has started as just an idea back almost 25 years ago, 30 years ago, doing robotic surgery has evolved into a whole different level of healthcare and has helped so many people. So what I'll tell you to take away is no idea is a silly idea and no dream a little dream. Make them all big dreams and follow. If it's truly something you're excited about, come on board, and we'd love to have you.